They say children often carry the weight of their parents' actions. So, what became of the offspring of Jesse James, one of America's most feared outlaws? The truth might surprise you. In this account, we dive into the lives of Jesse James's 3 children. After the infamous outlaw met his violent end in 1882, his family was left to rebuild what remained. Jesse fathered 4 children, but only 2 lived into adulthood: his son Jesse Jr. and his daughter Mary. A pair of twins born earlier sadly passed away in infancy. So, how did these children grow up under the legacy of a man so deeply tied to crime and legend? Their stories, filled with brushes against the law and unexpected turns, reveal a hidden chapter of the James family saga. He was born in 1875 in Nashville, Tennessee, right in the middle of his father's outlaw years. Being the child of America's most wanted train and bank robber meant his early life was far from normal. After Jesse Sr.'s death, young Jesse had to live under one of the most infamous surnames in the nation. His family even tried disguising him under a new name, Tim Edwards, but people still recognized who he was. Growing up, Jesse Jr. carried both pride and shame. Pride in being connected to a legendary figure, but shame from the notoriety that came with it. By the late 1890s, as a man in his early 20s, a question lingered. Would he walk the outlaw path his father carved, or step into a different future? That question came to a head in 1898 when, at just 23, Jesse Jr. found himself entangled with the law in an event that eerily echoed his father's life. He was arrested and accused of taking part in a Missouri Pacific train robbery. Headlines exploded. Jesse James's son on trial for train robbery. It felt like history repeating itself. Some were convinced that the son of Jesse James was bound for a criminal life. Others believed he was merely a victim of his name. The facts remain blurry, but what we do know is that he stood trial in 1899. The courtroom was packed with spectators eager to see if the son of an outlaw was guilty or innocent. With the support of a respected attorney, Jesse Jr. denied the charges, and eventually, the jury acquitted him. He walked free, bringing enormous relief to the James family. Whether truly innocent or simply spared by doubt, he narrowly escaped repeating his father's fate. That brush with the law changed him. Facing possible prison must have left a lasting impression, showing him how dangerous it was to live in the shadow of Jesse James. Afterward, Jesse Jr. seemed determined to distance himself from any outlaw image. In an ironic twist, in 1905, he himself became a victim of crime, robbed of about $300, a substantial amount at the time. The news spread quickly. The son of the most famous robber in the West had been held up at gunpoint. Luckily, he was unharmed, but the event underscored his ordinary life, one where he could be prey to criminals instead of being one. From that point, Jesse Jr. began reshaping his life. He ran a pawn shop in Kansas City while studying law on the side. In 1906, he passed the Missouri bar exam, officially becoming a licensed attorney. Imagine that. The son of the Wild West's most notorious outlaw became a defender of the law. Even before that, his personal life was taking shape. In January 1900, at 24 years old, he married Stella McGowan at his mother Z's home. Z, bedridden with illness, witnessed the ceremony from her bed. Together, Jesse Jr. and Stella went on to raise 4 daughters. The contrast was striking. While Jesse James Sr. was remembered for robbing trains, Jesse Jr. became known as a husband, father, and family man surrounded by his little girls. Still, he didn't abandon his father's memory entirely. In 1899, shortly after his acquittal, he published Jesse James, My Father, offering the world the first direct account of the outlaw's life from within the family. In doing so, he tried to present the man behind the headlines, reshaping the narrative around his father. Years later, Jesse Jr. took another surprising step. In the silent film era of the 1920s, Wild West stories fascinated audiences. In 1921, Jesse Jr. himself portrayed his father in 2 films, Jesse James Under the Black Flag and Jesse James as the Outlaw. His sister Mary even appeared alongside him. Imagine sitting in a theater then, realizing the actor playing Jesse James was his real son. It was a living piece of history. For Jesse Jr., it was a way to honor and reinterpret his father's story through art. In the 1920s, he moved with his family to Los Angeles, far from the Missouri roots of the James clan. There, he even opened a restaurant called the Jesse James Inn, a spot that drew curiosity seekers eager to dine at the establishment of the outlaw's son. By then, Jesse Jr. had come to terms with his name, even using it in business. Jesse Edward James Jr. lived a long life, passing away in 1951 at the age of 75. By then, he had long since left behind the turbulence of his youth and carved out a life of respectability. Born on June 17, 1879, Mary was only a small child, just shy of 3 years old, when her father was killed in 1882. Unlike her brother Jesse Jr., she had virtually no memory of the famous outlaw. She grew up in the shadow of his legend, raised by her widowed mother and older brother, both of whom remembered the turmoil, while she herself was too young to recall it. As she matured, Mary's life unfolded far more quietly than her brother's. In the late 1800s, women were rarely the focus of public attention, and in many ways that shielded her. While the press followed Jesse Jr.'s every move, Mary was able to grow up largely outside the spotlight. Of course, being Jesse James's daughter in Missouri was no secret, but Mary wasn't splashed across newspaper headlines the way her brother was. By most accounts, she was a gentle, well-mannered young woman. Her mother Z raised her with care, teaching her to be polite, educated, and as far removed from outlaw life as possible. Mary likely spent her girlhood helping with household work, attending church, and going to school, all while living with the burden of a last name everyone recognized. Her adulthood took a more traditional turn. In November 1900, Mary lost her mother, who passed away of natural causes when Mary was 21. It was a difficult loss, but by then she had found stability with Henry Lafayette Barr, the man she would marry. On March 6, 1901, she wed Henry in Missouri. With that union, she left behind the James surname, becoming Mary Barr, a change that gave her even greater distance from her father's notoriety. Together, Mary and Henry built a quiet family life. They raised 4 children, 3 sons, Lawrence, Forrest, and Chester, and a daughter, Henrietta. While her sons carried on the Barr name, the legacy of Jesse James likely faded into the background of daily life. Sadly, Mary endured the heartbreak of losing her infant daughter Henrietta at about 7 months old, echoing the pattern of infant loss that seemed to haunt the James family. Still, Mary carried on, devoted to raising her surviving children with love and steadiness. Unlike many tied to infamous figures, Mary never sought fame or attention. In fact, unless told, most who knew her probably would not have realized she was the daughter of Jesse James, especially after her name change. Yet, she did step briefly into the public eye once. In 1921, when her brother Jesse Jr. starred in silent films about their father, Mary also appeared alongside him in Jesse James Under the Black Flag. Likely only in a small role, her participation was nevertheless remarkable. For someone who had lived her life away from infamy, joining a film about her father must have been a curious experience, perhaps a way to support her brother, or to connect with the legend from which she had long been separated. After that, she returned to her private life. Through the 1920s and 1930s, she watched her children grow, eventually becoming a grandmother. In her community, she was known simply as Mrs. Mary Barr, a kind and gracious woman far removed from the world of gunfights and robberies. Mary passed away on October 11, 1935, at just 56 years old. The exact cause is not well documented, though it may have been illness. Her husband Henry died around the same time, leaving their children without both parents in a single year. She was laid to rest near the place she had lived her quiet life. By the time of her death, Jesse James's era had long since become legend, the Wild West reduced to myth and memory. Number 1. Gould and Montgomery James. Any account of Jesse James's children would be incomplete without mentioning the twin boys he and Z lost. In late February 1878, while Jesse was still living as a fugitive, Z went into premature labor. On February 28th, she delivered twin sons. The babies were given unusual names, Gould and Montgomery, in honor of the 2 doctors, Dr. Gould and Dr. Montgomery, who struggled to keep them alive. Sadly, the effort was in vain. Both boys survived only a short while, perhaps just a few days each. Records are sparse, but we know both infants died that same year. For Jesse James, feared across the nation, it was a deeply personal blow. Beneath the outlaw reputation, he was a grieving father. He and Z buried their little sons, likely near the family farm in Kearney, Missouri. Jesse's mother, serving as grandmother to the twins, is said to have marked their graves with simple stones. No newspapers reported their passing. The world was too focused on Jesse's next heist. Yet inside the James household, it was a devastating tragedy, a quiet sorrow that never made headlines.